Hope everybody is doing well on this particular Wednesday afternoon. It's time for another edition of the online dinner party. Got one guest already in the house, and we'll see if some others pop in or don't. But all along those lines, definitely, I hope everybody is doing well and trying to stay cool in this lovely hot weather because I know it is definitely sizzling. We did have some rain here in Durham, North Carolina earlier, and that cooled it off a little bit, but it's still sizzling out there. And I don't think that the sizzling is going to be ending anytime soon. I am a July baby, having been born on July 1st, so I definitely know about this hot weather and all along those lines. And I'm oftentimes involved in events that are even taking place in the summer. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago on my birthday, I went and was doing MC work at the Eno, which I do on a regular basis, and always see some amazing artists, hear some amazing music, and just get to have some great camaraderie with people that are out at that amazing event on a regular basis. Went out there on the 4th as well. Didn't have to do the MC work, but I did pop out there and enjoyed some of the activities, even though I didn't stay probably as long as I would have liked because it was definitely, like I said, sizzling even on that day. I think I was out there for maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours. Then I came back home and watched some of the fireworks from a rooftop setting across from Duke, since I don't live that far from Duke University. So I went up there and got a chance to see some of the fireworks coming from the ballpark and other locations as well, because residents and others will be shooting off fireworks on the 4th of July on that particular time. And of course, folks are still in this part of the month enjoying cookout and other things in that space. And more of us are getting out. As a matter of fact, I know the Hayti Heritage Center, which I am part of, I believe it's on this coming Saturday. There'll be a food truck rodeo and there'll be some vendors at that particular event, and that'll be a fun activity. And later on, I'll be going there today because there is a group that has been having practice on a regular basis. That is some of the members of Switchyard Theater, and they've been having practice for a show that they will be having in Raleigh. I think that show actually starts next week, but they've been practicing at the center in one of our classrooms and all along those lines. So, like I said, always have amazing guests and amazing people that I have the pleasure of meeting and getting to learn about them and what they are doing and how they got involved in what they do and all in that space. So I'm definitely going to bring in an artist that I've had the pleasure of running across a couple of times, because definitely they are out in the community and have done a number of things in the art world, and definitely are oftentimes at a lot of the things that I just mentioned. I know that I have run across at the Eno, and I think I've even run across at Centerfest and a number of the other festivals that exist as well. So here to bring in Nana into the conversation and learn how they got involved in their artwork, and they're actually in their studio right now. So it's always good when we've got folks that are in their studios and can show off their studio work at the same time and find out how they are surviving in this life as well, because they are doing other things. And we know that oftentimes artists have to have other jobs in that space. So Nana, glad that you're here and glad that you're able to come and have this conversation with me. I see I've got Ryan as well, so Ryan might join the dinner party, and we'll see if anybody else does, and we'll just have a conversation and all along those lines. But Nana, like I said, I know that I've run across your artwork on times and everything, and I'm sure folks are like, wow, it looks like a lot of great artwork that's in the background. So were you always an artist? Did you always know you wanted to be an artist when you were growing up? Were you the little kid that was painting and all in that space? And I know that you are a native of another country, and actually one of the other shows that we do here on Pod TV actually involves around that, because definitely it is a show that we do called Que Pasa Mujer, and that is every Sunday. And the young lady who is a tutor out of Virginia, Viviana Andrade, I believe, is from one of those Latin American countries, and her cousin, who is in Vegas, and a friend of theirs that is a poet, they come and talk about the various things that are going on in the Latin American community, including some misconceptions that people have, because sometimes they want to make folks into a kind of like one unified group, when we know that Latin America is very diverse and has a lot of diverse cultures. So definitely, I'd love to hear some of your story as to what got you into artwork, and were you into artwork when you were a young kid over there in Puerto Rico?
No, I was not an artist when I was in Puerto Rico. Actually, I started playing with clay when I moved to North Carolina in 2009. Um, and I am a Puerto Rican at heart. And as you know, Puerto Ricans, we are U.S. citizens. So we sort of kind of are from this country, but we're not from this country. It's complicated. That's how I see it. I I was always drawn to do things with my hands. And until I found clay, I had not found my medium. So
Mm,
clay really engaged me in a way that allowed me to express what was inside, what was the longing of my culture and my people. And I do enjoy living in North Carolina. My life is here now. I do have family and friends in Puerto Rico because I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. And when I was a child, my father used to take me to the rivers and to the mountains and to the caves in the island. And I always saw these carvings that were left on rocks
mhm.
behind by the indigenous people of Puerto Rico, who are the Tainos. And these images always caught me, and that's what I started to depict with my art. And as I said, I used to work at UNC doing research, so I come from a different background. I'm not an artist by education, or the formal education, how you would call it. I
Right.
started taking classes at Claymakers, which is a local
Uh-huh.
art studio here in Durham. And I don't know what happened. Suddenly I became an artist. And that's my story.
So,
And I see myself as a historian with my art
mm,
because I have grabbed these images and I have researched them and I have educated myself in what they mean and where they came from. And I when I people see my art, I explain to them what it is, and it's interesting to see how people get engaged with the history behind my art. And I feel that I'm sharing my roots and my history and my um, ancestors' art
mhm.
through my art. So
No, that
that's how I see myself.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I know that I was good friends and still consider myself a friend, even though he has passed on, and all along those lines with Baba Chuck Davis. And Baba Chuck Davis definitely did a lot of understanding, not just of his own roots, but also the roots that come from Africa and other places, because he did a lot of research in order to develop and give people an understanding of African dance from the various African countries that he had the pleasure of visiting. So I guess one of the questions I've got for you, Nana, is how important do you think it is for artists to understand their cultural history and to put some of that in their art? Because it does seem to me that you do that quite actively, and I was just wondering if you think that that's something that you hope more artists would do as well.
Well, I think that art comes from your heart and your soul. So it depends what engages you.
Right.
So I know that there are Puerto Rican artists that do drawings and do other things and work in different medias, and they're not necessarily depicting the culture with their art, but
Right.
they are um, putting their culture in the art, which is, it's a different take. So artists have different takes on the way that they express themselves. um, but for me, it's very much about sharing my roots, because I can only tell you I am very Puerto Rican. It's just how I feel. It's like it's this thing that it's inside my soul, and I want to share that culture with people because we Puerto Ricans have a very rich culture. We have a mix of African, European, and Taino. And in Puerto Rico, I think it's because we were an island,
Mhm.
our cultures really blended. So we really truly have a diverse blend of who we are. And so we incorporated all of those cultures and made one culture out of all of those. So in my art, you would see, you see in the sign in the back, there's a mask.
Mhm.
The masks are very much African.
Right.
They come from our African and Moroccan roots. And the petroglyphs, which are the images you see over here, or I'm working on a sun right now.
Okay.
I'm glazing him. Um, those are from the Taino. Then I also have images of the three kings or
Mhm.
the three wise men. That's very European. And in my culture, the three kings bring you presents
Well,
on January 6th. So we have Santa Claus and the three kings. So we have to really be good in December and in January.
okay. That should be good for 2 months.
Yeah, as kids, that's the whole thing. If you're good, they bring you presents. So I like to share that blend of all these cultures that have made the Puerto Rican culture. And I know other artists do the music and
Mhm.
the dances and some other things. But for me, this is how I feel. I just want to share my culture and the history behind my culture with people. And it's interesting to see how people engage when I tell them the stories about the meaning of the petroglyphs and the meaning of the vejigantes, which is how we call the masks, and how this cultural heritage has transcended into the present. And I read somewhere, I think I went to see Muka at the North Carolina Museum of Art, and he had a phrase that really engaged me, and
Mhm.
I'm rephrasing it. I see my art as the evolution of my ancestors' art, because I grabbed their images that were one dimension and I brought them into two dimension and three dimension to continue depicting those images now in the future, coming from the past.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Everything I know that when I've looked at your art in the different places that I have seen it, and it is oftentimes very whimsical and has some whimsical nature. I was watching and looking at that rabbit in the background and all in that space, and I was a member, and I'm still technically, I guess, a member, even though I've not been active with them lately. With a audio troupe called the Funky Eye Puppets, which was founded by a gentleman of Asian descent that had worked with George Lucas and a number of others, but it was like
Mhm.
an audio theater group and all in that space. And a lot of us were rediscovering our childhood wonder and everything. So I was wondering if that's something that you are glad to have in your art, and is that something that others have observed as well? Because as I've looked at some of the art, it does seem to recapture that childhood kind of whimsicalness nature that a lot of times we don't pay enough attention to. I know that, and you may know him as well. My dad is a fairly well-known artist here in the area. Jim Lee is my dad, and a lot of people will say that some of his art around nature and other things has some whimsical nature also. But I was just wondering your thoughts about the importance of having that childlike nature in what you are doing.
Well, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, having said that, the whimsical, I love the fact that it's whimsical because it makes me happy when I look at the images. And I think that that feeling is conveyed in the image and it touches people, because I see people looking at my pieces. They have no idea what they are, but they are captured, I believe, by that whimsical nature of it, because we live in a serious world and sometimes we just need to feel like loose and childlike, and just to keep the positiveness of it. And my images, when I don't know what they are, I make up a name and then I attach a whimsical meaning to them and I put positive messages on them. And so I think that that captures people, because people, we all want to laugh and smile and be happy. So providing something that it's happy and colorful and weird in a way, like you say, in a whimsical way. It's it's nice. And for me, that's very fulfilling. And I love what I do and I'm passionate about it. And my father was a businessman and he always used to tell me, if you're passionate about what you're talking about, that passion will be captured by your audience. And it is captured by the audience. I go to Ceci Stock Gallery every Saturday to tell my story and to meet people, and it is very beautiful because it's just when I see people looking at my pieces and I tell them what they are, they're interested. I give them a little history class and they're interested, and I see them enjoying the telling of my stories, and that's really very, very fulfilling. And for an artist, I think that's the greatest joy for an artist to see somebody really enjoying your story behind your art.
No, I
And
definitely agree. One of the things that I was, as I was hearing you and I've read a little bit about your background and everything, and you actually share that to some degree with my dad, who was, his father was a biologist, and he definitely had a love of science, which is why science is sometimes incorporated in his artwork and all along those lines. But there are some people that will look at this, and I'm going to bring in our other guests as well very shortly, and they will think about the nature of the left brain, right brain discussion and everything. And they will think that the two can't necessarily meld together. But it seems to me that you have had success in both fields, because some people will say that the creative field is more left brain, but you have also worked in the science field, which some people will say is more right brain, even though I think you have to have some creativity in the science field as well. But I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that parallel, and also how you got involved in the science world, because I do know that that is part of your career path as well.
okay, I love math. So I started studying math and I went into the computer science world. And that's what my bachelor's degree is in, computer science and math. And then I decided to do a master's degree and go into more to be in touch with people and community. So I did a master's degree in public administration, and I ended up doing research at UNC with that degree. So having said that, um, in terms of my art, when I see a one dimension image, I see a puzzle in my brain. Like, how can I make this image come to life in 3 dimensions? So you have to think about, how am I going to build this? And that's very mathematical. And I actually use geometric figures to create my images. Like I use circles and cones and, all these geometric figures that would make an image. And in my brain, the way I see them, I'm not like a person who draws that they can see the 3 dimension. No, I see the 1 dimension. Then I use my mathematical brain to look at the geometry of the image and how can I make this image using geometrical figures that I would put together to make the image. And so that's where my math comes in.
Yeah.
Where my computer science comes in is when I see the image from a book that has a drawing that it's not clear, then I use the technology to create a sharp image of the petroglyph. So I can use that to put in my brochures and in my little cards, because I add little cards with the images and the meaning of the image. So when people purchase my art, they can have the meaning of that image with them when they go home. Yeah. So I incorporate and I have to tell you, if I didn't have technology, I wouldn't know how to do my art, because I use my computer to make big drawings. Like if I move a little bit, you see that sun in there in the back.
Right.
So that's a computer image that I make. And when I want to make big pieces, I print it big, and I use that as a tool to make my art. So that's how it all comes into place.
No, it sounds like it comes into place really well and everything. I have to teach you about one thing that was said on the Latin show on this past Sunday. They were actually having a conversation around words and how words are oftentimes misconstrued and all in that space. But they also said something, and I'm not saying other cultures don't do it, but they were talking about how a lot of times the Latin culture does a lot of talking with their hands. And I was watching you as you were giving the answer, and I'm going like, it's very true. They do a lot of talking with their hands because you were doing a lot of that. So I had to teach you about that because Viviana and Nick Tay were talking about that on their show Sunday. And as I was watching, I was going like, yep, Latin folks do a lot of hand motion and all in that kind of way.
Well, that's our passion. What can I tell you?
No doubt about it. We saw a gentleman that was in there earlier and everything, and I know that sometimes you have to do, and we've talked about it on this show as well on a number of times. I am still at 61 in that single lane, but I still have to balance work-life balance, whether that is with dating folks, if I'm in that kind of space, or whether that in other kinds of ways as well. But how do you balance the work-life balance? Because I've got a number of friends of mine that are in the creative fields, and sometimes they have to do other jobs. They have to even go into other job fields and all along those lines. So I'm just wondering, how do you manage that work-life balance?
Well, initially, like 5 years ago, when I was working, because I'm retired at the moment, so I have the best of the. I am in the best place you can ever be in your life. That's how I feel about it. But I would go to work, and then in the evenings go to my studio and work the evenings, and then on the weekends. And for me, the art was a way of releasing the stress from the job, because I had a stressful job um, at UNC, and the art would allow me to de-stress. So I could go to work on Monday, a little bit more relaxed and more, upbeat. And I always believe that it's important to eat well, work, but learn how to stop to work, because sometimes we take the work home. And I worked until 5 o'clock, and I went home and I just detached myself from the phone, because then, you have your emails from work in the phone and all of that. So I would try to keep those things separate so I could be emotionally balanced to deal with everything. And initially, my art was just a hobby, and I would put up tents and see how people reacted to my art, and then suddenly my art was flying off the shelves, and I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm an artist. That's when I discovered I was an artist, when people kept buying and coming back and coming back. So I think that in life it's important to balance all the facets in your life and to make space for every single thing, like space, family time, work time, distress time, like a hobby or your art or whatever. And eat well, stay healthy, walk, do exercises. All of those things are important in life. So it's a mix of all of that. But for me, my art, at one point in my life, sort of kind of saved my life, because I lost my husband, my first husband, um, and the clay really allowed me to deal with the pain and the struggle, and all of that you go through when you lose a loved one. So it's been wonderful for me. It has really helped me keep my mind in check. And I see clay as a medium where you have to learn the art of letting go, because clay has a mind of its own sometimes, and you can have accidents, and you can work on a big piece and suddenly it explodes in the kiln. So you have to learn how to say, okay, it's only clay. And that helps you in other things in life as well, because you learn how to let go, because it's not how what happens to you is how you react to what happens to you, what can keep you centered and less stressed.
No,
Does that
definitely
make
going to
sense?
bring it. Yep, definitely going to bring in William. I'm sure he's been listening and has some thoughts as well. And this is actually for both of you. And I definitely hope William will join the conversation and share some of the things that he's got going on in his life as well. But I was actually on one of our regular shows, our news show earlier, and the conversation about the importance of art came up. I personally think that art is very important, but I think some other people were thinking of art as being almost a frivolous pastime and all along those lines, and it didn't have as much importance as some of the other things that we face on a regular basis. Now, I would argue that art teaches critical thinking and that it is used in a number of other ways that can be very helpful to the overall well-being of an individual. But as one that is in the art field, Nana, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and William, you're in human development, so I'd love to hear your thoughts as to the importance of art and just art in general, because I do think that some people think of it as, hey, they don't really need it, and it's even come up in the discussion around the writer's strike, because some people are like, go get a real job and all in that kind of space, even though I personally think that art is very much a real job. But I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, personally, I think that art is our history,
Mm-hmm.
and art is the way in which we were able to know the previous civilizations that gave us mathematics and theology and critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Egypt. I went to Egypt 2 years ago, and I have to tell you, when you go into these temples and you see the writing on the wall, that's art. But that is their library. The way I saw it, this is the Egyptian library. So where would we be if the Egyptians or the Greeks will have not shared their art with us and left it in a way that we could discover it and then be able to understand it? So for me, art is the history of humanity, and it's how the history of humanity has been expressed throughout the millenniums. And that's my take on art.
No,
So
I definitely can agree with that. William, if you'll share a little bit about your background, like I said, I know you're into some things with human development, and I'm sure you've been enjoying some of the conversation and all along those lines. But if you'll share a little bit about your own background and your own take on art as well.
Sí. ¿Cómo estás, hermana?
hola, ¿qué tal?
Puertorriqueña.
Bienvenido.
Perfecto. Me voy a aprender español un poquito.
Ok.
No más. 2 palabras por años.
Muy bien, muy
Ay,
bien.
caramba. Mi esposa, my wife is Mexicana, and
Okay.
I have a student. He's married to Puerto Ricana. They just brought their mom over from Puerto Rico, and her sister is here, and that's also a student, kind of a former student, and he's married to her, the sister of the first person I mentioned, and she's, of course, Puerto Ricana. And I just got off the phone with somebody in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
And I was raised in Philadelphia. I was the only white man for miles. So we all have a common ground here. Now,
Awesome.
as far as art, can somebody teach me to draw a stick person? That's my only request.
A stick person?
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to say is that if I'm hearing him correctly, that is my thing as well. I've heard people that say that we all have an artistic talent, and I do agree we all have various artistic talents, but I've even heard people say that everybody can sing, which I don't necessarily agree with, because I've heard people hear my melodious voice and be like, you should be a natural singer. And I'm like, well, I'm not a singer, and the times that I've tried to be in choirs, it wasn't a pretty picture. I'll just leave it at that and everything. And I've also heard people say that anybody can draw and all along those lines, and I don't know that that necessarily is true as well, because some of my drawings, my stick figures don't look all that well. They look like they might be anorexic, or they might not be all that well. So I'm thinking what William is saying is that hard work is also lacking as well, if you like to be able to draw better.
My wife can do it. She draws the flowers and she goes out to the garden. Today she made all these beautiful little tiny flowers, and she educated me about tiny flowers. Tiny flowers. So I made her a spray thing with sugar water that attracts the the butterflies, and so I have a long way to go to do with art, and I appreciate art. I love beauty. We have 13. I have to change it because 13 is supposed to be a bad number. Maybe I have to make another rose bush, but we have 13 rose bushes as it is right now.
We can just make it a lucky number right now.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Let's just make 13 a lucky number.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just change the number and see if we can't change the nature of the number. And instead of it being an unlucky number, it can be a lucky number. You know, that's like what they have done with some buildings, because I know that some buildings, they are so panicked about 13 and some of the other numbers that they will skip it. That is why you will see that some buildings, including some major buildings, you mentioned Philly, I think there's some in New York that they literally go from the 12th to the 14th floor. I'm sorry, it's still the 13th floor, even if you call it 14 and all that space, that's still the 13th floor. You can't change the nature of numbers. If it's the 13th floor, it's the 13th floor.
That's how I feel about it. It's like, okay, you called it 14, but it's still the 13th floor.
That's true. Let's have a little miracle. Is that okay? My background is, I don't know if it's interesting to me. It's
go ahead.
Verbose, but my background is I was a monk of 3 different traditions. I owned and operated martial arts schools. I've written 14 books. I teach people all over the world about advanced meditation, how to actually meditate, scientifically verified. In other words, for example, in the next 15 minutes, hopefully, we're going to do that and actually experience a change of pulse, a change of hormones, a change of breathing pattern, a change of brain waves. And besides that background, I blew out the internet. It just went out.
You're back.
See it? Or it didn't for you? Just went out here. Okay. Yeah. So you ready? I'm just going to go right into it because that's all I know how to do.
Go into it.
Okay. Step 1. There's got to be an issue. There's got to be something. You're dating man.
Yeah, I'm dating man, but nobody in the moment and everything. I mean, if I was to say, you said it has to be a issue. I mean, the main issue right now is
there's got to be an unmet need. So
I was going to get to the unmet need.
Health.
I mean, the unmet need that I think we all face, including myself right now, is the unmet need. And that's part of where I was going to carry the conversation with Nana at some point, is the unmet need of not understanding your worth and everything. Because a lot of times people will not necessarily charge what they should charge if they're in the business lane. And I'm sure that there's even something that Nana has run across where you are wanting to be kind to your customers and maybe give them a discount. I know that even my music friends get frustrated when they are asked to do a festival and only getting paid like $100 a man or $75 a man, which is kind of hard to live off of. So I think the need of finances is where I would go.
Yeah. We're all living in this subject-object, fight, flight, shock reality all the time. When we're doing our art, whatever our art is, or science, I love science, we're involved in something that's no longer subject-object. We're kind of in the zone. When we're in love, when we're happy, when we're looking at each other, our eyes are not subject-object. We don't look at each other out there. We receive each other in here. Friendship. It's almost non-existent. But you can do it if you do whatever your meditation is, whatever your way to be able to commune with God, source, so forth. The purpose becomes really clear. The evolution of the human genome. What's your contribution? How are you going to serve others to actualize that? And if you generate enough magnetism, you could charge what you want. I charge this way. People have it, they better give it. If they don't have it, okay, that's a different story. But to be supported, I mean, I live in the mountain here. I got a new Lexus out there. I got a new house here paid for. I got a new solar thing paid for. That's because I charge a lot to do my classes. But I also, like the person in North Carolina I just got off the phone with, he has serious mental issues. You know, I spend hours every day pretty much to help him, and, you know, doesn't share money. So I think that to be able to generate funds or generate attractiveness, maybe you've got to be in that irrefutable place that you're at when you're in your alone secret place, and then you got to put it in other people's faces. And then I think they get turned on. and they want a piece of that. And then you could say, well, I would like to eat. I would like to have enough money to go to Europe or whatever. You have money, please share it since you like me so much, or something like this, I think is the right attitude. But a lot of times if we're functioning from a void, then that void creates this draw to always be starving.
Mm.
Somebody pay attention to me, somebody give me something, somebody whatever. Now, I was super poor a lot of my life. I come from a rich family originally, and then I was poorest of poor, and I lived in the poorest neighborhoods. Then I became a monk. But that inner starving thing makes us grasp out at each other all the time, as though you're going to give me something. I mean, maybe you could give me a piece of cheese or a spot on the podcast or a nice son or a hug or, something. But you can't really fill me. You just don't have that capacity. So I better be able to do it alone. But even in dreams, my mind is constantly with subject object and who are you and who am I and mommy and daddy and the world and mass shootings and God knows what. So it's really hard, I think, to become self-sourcing. To become self-sourcing, you have to do that first step of recognize the unmet need and feel it. So you draw a body map and you point a marker in your mind and say, oh, this place in my stomach and this place in my chest and this place in my back and this place. There's all kinds of places that actually are ailing. I mean, just by the nature of aging, but there's emotional conversation around these particular areas. That's how a master martial artist, old guy, can send a young guy flying, because you could see that super sensitive spot. But also, when you hold space for other people, you have their weakness in their hand. You have a responsibility to care about them and be gentle and to heal them and all that. So when your vibe is just super because you spent 3 hours in the morning in prayer meditation or something like that, well, that's it. Go get a girlfriend, go make money. Nothing's going to stop you. But if you don't have that work ethic towards the art of life, the art and science, the Guru of the Beatles wrote a book called The Science of Being and the Art of Living, something like that. When science and art meet, now you've got this super coherence that kind of paves a way. The religious traditions talk about it in that maybe God, we can say that word, God's spirit goes in front of us. But if we don't actually say, oh, I like the tree, or, oh, I like these two folks, or, oh, my wife's flower obsession, I love it. If there's not somebody I can trust, something out there, God, teaching, tree, and I'm just constantly a mess trying to manage and get food and get whatever I get and never surrender totally, then you can never build up that kind of internal vibe. So you go on a vacation or you buy a piece of art, and then that causes these changes in the body. How profoundly can you devote your life to your art and forget everything else? That's the danger and the opportunity.
And that makes a lot of sense. And that's something we talked about on this show and on this network several times. And I'd definitely love to hear from Nana's thoughts about this, but you kind of alluded to it because a lot of people get caught up in their inner critic and their outer critic and all in that space. And I think that's kind of what you were alluding to, because I know that I have been guilty of it. There have been, you talked about relationships, there have been relationships and there have been jobs that I have not gone after later to find out that they should have been gone after because they might have been having a mutual interest, or in the case of the job, I might have been just as strong a candidate as the person that got the job. But a lot of times we have these inner conversations with ourselves and we can oftentimes talk ourselves out of things. So Nana, is that something that you have done, and how have you fought against that, kind of what William was talking about? And also, how have you dealt with the folks that are outside? Because you mentioned having that loving family, but I'm sure that even when you went into the art, there might have been that first husband and who knows, maybe the current significant other as well, and others that might have been sitting there going like, you're not going to make any money of this. Why do you even want to bother doing this? And all along those lines, or they might have been more encouraging. But I do know that sometimes our folks that are trying to look out for our best interest will sometimes discourage us more than they need to. And I don't know if you ran into that, and if you did, how you coped with it.
Well, I have to confess, I have read a few books. One of them is the the war of art, not the art of war, but the war of
Oh,
art.
Right.
And there was another one called, I think, Real Artists Don't Starve or
Mhm.
something. I don't remember exactly the titles, but um, I have also in my life, because I have MS
Mm.
and I have had to work with the idea that I have more energy inside my body than what I have in my body itself. Like emotionally, I have all this energy, but physically, I don't. So I have had to deal with the balancing that act of having too much energy inside and not enough energy outside. That has helped me to engage with abundance, the abundance of the universe, and having um, money or sufficient money, it for me is also perspective, because there are people who are millionaires who are not happy and they don't have enough money and they have to keep making money. So for me, and this is life growth, it doesn't happen, in a week, or I'm 66 years old, so I have lived a little bit. I have learned that if you realize that you have everything you need and nothing you don't, you're happy inside. I have also learned that money is energy.
Mhm.
And you can stock energy and build a dump and stop it anywhere. You have to let it flow. So in that, I believe that if I give, it's going to come back to me in some way. And in my art, I started like seeing how much people would pay for this piece or how much people would pay for that piece. And I am finding myself, interestingly enough, in a space where I can't keep up with the demand.
Mm.
And so I am, like you said, William, if you can give me some hints on that, I would love to hear them. I am in this space where I am thinking about, okay, so I am in this great space that every artist want to be in, right? But what is the price that will not stop the flow of this energy I was talking before? Because I want all sorts of people to have my art in their home, because people take a little piece of me when they buy my art to their house. And that's an honor for me.
Definitely an honor and everything. And along those same lines, I was actually going to redirect it to William as well, because I do think that mindset is a lot of what goes on even in our healing journey. Did not know that until you just revealed it, and I'm glad that you were comfortable enough to share it. But definitely, I have a direct association with MS. I lost an aunt to MS, but she actually lived with it for many years. I want to say she lived with it for about 30 or 40 years. And part of that was that Aunt Carolyn had a very positive mindset, even when she was starting to have the body start to fall apart and things of that nature. She still would oftentimes laugh and joke and do other things. So she had a very positive mindset. And my brother, who now has it as well, has a very positive mindset, is involved in some clubs that are of fun events like the Polaris Slingshot Club and
Mhm.
other things along those lines. But he is very much having a positive mindset as well. So I think that if there are severe challenges that we face, even quote unquote terminal illnesses and everything, that it is the mindset that lets us go past that time that we were expected to go and everything. Because I'm pretty sure that Carolyn lived a little bit past, and a lot of that is the advances that have happened in our modern medicine. And I'm sure that my brother is hoping to be around as long, if not longer, than she was because of some of those modern advances. But William, what is your take on mindset, and how important is that mindset aspect? Because I think that it is very important, because I even see some folks that get overly frustrated by their family dynamics. And sometimes I think that they are wallowing too much in the negativity of the mindset and not finding the positive in whatever is going on. But I just wondering your take on that.
You ever hear the quote? If you ever want to see how spiritual you are, go spend some time with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just no external solution to a personal problem, and I think the mindset, maybe a way to look at it would be the body mindset,
Right.
body mind, because we can be. My wife has PhD, and she was from one of the poorest areas of Mexico, and she went to England for her PhD and couldn't speak English when she arrived there for a PhD program. So her brain, wow, can it think, you know? And every morning I teach multiple people all the time, but the first person that I share with and learn from is my wife. And that's after I do hours on myself. And then it's hours with my wife. And then it's hours with other people. And the whole thing is a repeating theme, is that we can think about it. We can transcend and go beyond it. But can you feel it in your body, whatever your experience is? And this is where mindset really takes a front seat to the importance of our lives. But it's not mindset. It's not cortex mindset. It's body mind, body mindset. Another little ditty on it would be, there's little engines, like digestion maybe is one engine. Sexuality is another engine. Heart's an engine. Senses are an engines. Thought is an engine. Emotion is an engine. When one of these engines is really out of sync, like you were talking about how you can have a lot of happiness, but you need some body energy. You know, if one of these engines are really out of sync, there's no magic. Personal coherence is the luck factor in life. And we have to be really courageous to self-reinvent, because that's the only person that survives and thrives, the one that self-reinvents. So you can't know who you are. You can't know who you are. You just got to go for it.
No, it's self-reinvent, and also be willing to take chances even when the chances seem like they are going well against the odds. I mean, I have a lot of respect. I mean, there are things that they could be doing better and everything, but that's in anything. But I do have a lot of respect for the founders of this network, because, meaning Pod TV, because they founded it around the time of the whole notion of the pandemic, and they created it during that time of the pandemic, basically creating a live stream TV network and all in that space. And they were doing stuff even with PBS and I think IBM and some other franchises before the pandemic. And part of it was that they were frustrated by not hearing enough issues being addressed, whether that's medical issues or fiscal literacy or a number of other things. And when they went to the networks were like, yeah, we can do it, but you got to pay XYZ amount of money, or we'll put it on at 3 a.m. when we could, so nobody's hardly watching anything at 3 a.m. Even though I must admit that I was watching NCIS or Scorpion or one of those detective dramas much too late last night and everything. But that's just one of my own little faults and everything. But I am oftentimes having major respect. I'm going to give some family examples of people that are doing things, like I said, that's what they did, and they're not part of my family. But when folks are saying you can't do it, like my parents started a community radio station, and that's why I see the parallel between what Nick and Kim are doing and what my parents did, because they wanted to hear jazz and blues, and they started it in rural North Carolina because they were like, we don't hear this music and it's not being played. We want to talk about minority issues, and we want to talk about a number of other things. So versus saying that it couldn't be done, they went and did it. And part of that might be the fortitude that they got from their own ancestors. Because my grandmother started a African American library in Raleigh when like in the, I won't say the 40s or 50s. And she went to Columbia. You're talking about your aunt, I mean, your wife, and what she did in going to England, but she went to Columbia. And I want to say that I'll have to look it up. You can look up Molly Houston Lee on Wikipedia and everything, but I want to say she did it in the 40s. Columbia is a predominantly white university, so she had to do some serious talking and everything else, and even to get into Columbia. And I think that's where she got one of her library degrees and everything, because that was not a common trait to have happened in the 40s when there was not that much integration at that time.
Well, listen, we're all constantly trying to figure it out, right? To understand. And you know, and she knows, and I know. I don't think any of us know much of anything. But if we're able to kind of be receptive to not just our own brains, but let's say everybody's brain, or not our own hearts, but everybody's heart, then the power goes back in our body. You know, the heart's got a 40-foot field of magnetism that's measurable. The most advanced way to diagnose a heart in a hospital is called a magnetocardiograph.
Right.
They just like Star Trek. Whoop, they measure the field of the heart. So if you have a body challenge, and we all have body challenge because of aging, but if you have a particular body challenge, that's a little different. But you've got to create this change of heart. It's not a change of circumstance you need; it's a change of heart, and we need. The heart's a gland as well as an organ. So how can you reverse your brain and just work on you? Because if you can do that and have one moment, just one moment, that's a miraculous, like a breathtaking beauty moment. The epiphany moment, the art comes out of the kiln. Where you fall in love for the first time, and you get turned on, and your mind and body is singing. Well, guess what? Your MS is going to lessen. That's science. If you change your brain waves and your hormones and your breathing pattern and your pulse right now, the effects of the MS in your bloodstream is going to be less. So advanced meditators, the guy that's the greatest brain scientist of history, he won the Nobel Prize in brain science, Dr. Eric Kandel, he said that there's zero chance we're overestimating the possibilities of meditation and neuroplastic change. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to influence ourselves, but we can't do that unless we slow down. So the body is like a ground wire of the brain. The body is digesting your experience. That's why if you get a hug, then all of a sudden, if you feel safe, you kind of melt and you go into the body mind and you touch the earth. The buildings that we're in. Yeah.
William, I totally agree with what you're saying. Everything that you're saying is very real and everything, but a frustration that I have and everything, and I think others have it as well. I don't know that Nana's got it, but I'm going to mention what this frustration is, and I'd love to hear how you feel we can get away from this and everything. But anytime we have a disaster, we just are supposedly coming out of, even though there are some people that say that it is not 100% over and that there might be other waves and other things that will be taking place. But the consensus is that we are entering out of the pandemic. And there was a consensus many decades ago, well, actually 2 decades ago now, that we had the whole 9/11 fight and everything. But I know that a lot of times when we are in these throes of negativity and these things that are negative energies in our world, we come together and we come to a common goal and a common commonality. And we love that about what is going on at that time. Unfortunately, and this is where I get frustrated, I think that as soon as the quote unquote disaster is over, we go back into our old habits as humanity and all in that space. So I just wondering, what are some of the ways that you think we can make it more of a true, and I'm just going to use a 60s kind of hippie term, a more true age of Aquarius, and us have it in a more regular basis? And I've heard of this shift that we're supposed to be having in terms of the paradigm. And I personally hope that that shift is happening, because I would love to see that shift happen. But I do know that there is this frustration, at least from me, and I've shared it with others as well, and they kind of agree that we are very much into that positive nature when it is a time of need and a time of it happening. But, as soon as it's over, whatever that disaster is, we go back into that rat race kind of situation of me for me kind of attitude. And I don't necessarily think that that is fair and everything, but I just wonder y'all's take on that. And maybe I'm being harder on humanity.
I have a few comments.
Yes,
First
please.
of all, when the doctor told me you have an incurable disease, I said, the disease might be incurable, but I am curable. Mm. So I was 32 years old, I think, at the time. Okay. That's one comment I want to make. I know not everybody is like me, but I always went into the positive side of things. And I believe that I am responsible for my health. There is no magic pill. Right. In anything related to your health, you have to be involved. That's my comment on my health, right? So at 66, I have quality of life, which is all I care about, because quantity, longevity is not my thing. I want quality. And so another comment that I have is to go with William's comment, mind over matter. Mm-hmm. If you put your mind to it and you do the things that will help your mind take you where you want to go, it'll take you there. It might take a while. but you have to be persistent. It's like when you're getting a PhD. If you give up, then you won't get it. You have to be persistent. The same thing with your health and the ability to enjoy life to the fullest.
Go
Mark,
ahead.
in your comment, in terms of all the crazy stuff that's going on, um, sometimes I talk about, oh my God, and then I say, okay, what do I have control of?
Exactly.
All I have control of is me and the people that I engage.
Mhm.
So the way that I help maintain positiveness in our world right now is I treat everybody with respect. I listen to them. I give them love. And I'm not saying give them like, I come and let me hug you. No, no, no. I give them love from my inside by respecting them, listening to them. And if I don't agree with what they're telling me, I always tell them, you have the right to think the way you do. This is the way I think. But we can still have a conversation. We don't have to kill each other because we don't think the same way. So, my way of dealing with that is looking at the micro, which is the only thing I have control of. The
Yeah.
people that I touch on my everyday life. And, they don't have to hang out with me because, I know all my neighbors and I say hello. And if they did need anything, I'm here for them. They don't have to hang out with me, but I respect them in the space in which they're in. And I think that's the only thing I can do to fix what's going on because, I'm not Buddha or any other higher power that it's in our world. So I am not, guiding the masses, but I guide my little world. And that's how I maintain myself positive, um, despite what's going on around in this country, because sometimes I fear that somebody's going to come in, and because I say it out loud that I'm Puerto Rican, and that I advertise it lively.
What happened to the all this racism? We're all similar ages. I'm 56. I'm a little younger. Be 57 in about a month. 70s. There was none of this. Remember, like Sanford and Son, and I mean, we were all poking in fun, and the bad white man, the bad black man, the bad Puerto Rican, and the good one, and you could just see with so many of these programs the divinity of each of these cultures. And it was so wonderful. 9/11 happens, and now we're aware of our unmet need. Now we can be friendly with each other because we're permeable. I've got to tell you a miracle that happened because I just got to do it. It might just ruin my credibility with you, but I'm too busy to care about it.
No, go ahead.
So I'm teaching the official trainers of the Olympic ski team at Body Dynamics in Boulder, Colorado.
Mhm.
Wendy McClure was the lady that was the head of the official trainers of the Olympic ski team. I was teaching them about the internal chi power stuff. I'm in a documentary about the world's top Qigong Kung Fu masters to do with the internal teachings, the health stuff. And it was open to the general public. And this one lady came in, limbs like this, MS, with the cane, banging the cane. Now, I pray with all my might that, Nana, you really hear this story because this is exactly what happened, the way it happened. So I'm teaching everybody, and all of a sudden I start giving time to this lady, Joanne, just to get her to walk around in a circle. And so the lady calls me and she says, you keep giving Joanne all this time. We hired you to learn about the internal chi teachings. And I said, oh, really? Because I'm a feisty guy. So I went to the front of the class and I said, anybody that doesn't know this is my class, you can leave. It's not your class, it's my class. So 75% of the people left. 2 weeks later, the lady's limbs straightened out and she ran in one circle and the other. 2 years later, her limbs were straight and she was still walking fine. was a total miracle. This kind of stuff happens all the time.
Mhm.
That's a fact. It's irrefutable. Now, how does it happen? I don't know, but I would like to suggest this idea of the wonderful reference. Oh, what a way to get a phone call. Is that a call?
No,
Oh,
no.
Mark had said about the 9/11 how we're all friends with each other after 9/11.
Yeah.
We go to a horror movie if we go to those things. I mean, I don't know. I don't want you watching that crime good bit. I look now and then at such things. But we tap into this stuff because we can't feel the pain of the unrequited love of whatever it is. It's hard to go on to the positive without acknowledging the negative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why humanity does all these wars against each other. If we could change the war to ourselves, to try to speak better, to try to become more kind, more gentle, and set boundaries as well. You have to do that in life.
Mhm.
Then the outer wars would disappear. So this is why humanity goes to these world wars and 9/11, and you get to be friends with each other. And then 10 minutes later, you forget the entire reality of, hey, you know what? I'm confused. I have a problem and I need your help. Could you help me, please?
No, we don't do enough of that. And William and Nana,
We got
the
to do
other
it.
thing I was curious about is, do we pay, I'm going to use 9/11 as an example again, do we pay enough attention to nature and everything? Because I know that when COVID started, a lot of people observed what nature was doing. Deers were literally coming out of nowhere here in the South because they knew that we were in the house and were pretty much locked in, so they had a little bit more freedom. And one of the stories, I have a friend that Nana will know where Roy Lee's studio. Anybody else that's watching will not know this and everything, but it's over there near one of our downtown institutions, the hotel, and all along those lines. But before Roy Lee had that studio, another friend of mine, Aaron Moore, had that studio, and we used to go and just talk like we're doing here, and just having friendly conversations about life and philosophy and a number of other things. And after 9/11 happened, and I remember literally going to a photo shoot at a radio station that I was working at, and hearing the car go by, and the first thought that I had was, who the heck is doing a War of the Worlds reenactment? Because I heard it as a radio announcement. I didn't see it until I got there
Wow.
and
Yeah.
everything. I did see the towers going in. I mean, the towers being attacked and the building going down later. But my initial thought was, somebody's doing an Orson Welles remake and all in that space, because that's what I was hearing. It was coming from a car. So I'm thinking radio drama and everything. And I realized it was a real deal and what was going on in that space. But after that happened, we were talking, me and Aaron and some of the other folks. And one of the things that we observed, I don't know if you observed it where you were at that time, and I don't know if you were here at that time, Nana, or where you were, William, but one of the things that we observed was that it was like the animals got a memo from the God Force, or whatever you want to call it, and everything, that humans are about to be really stupid, so y'all might want to go into hiding. Because as we recalled it, we didn't see a bird in the air. We didn't see a vermin in there. Like, there were no mice, no of the other critters that you usually would see and everything. And it was almost as if around the world, the universe got a notion that, yeah, humans are about to be real stupid, so y'all might want to just chill for a minute, and all along those lines. And I brought this up to other folks from around the world, and they recollected on that. I even think I had some friends in New York that said that they didn't see pigeons, and we know pigeons is like a regularity in New York and everything, but they said they saw a lot of very unusual things in that space. So I don't know if y'all had any observations similar, but that was just one that I had that nobody has refuted as of yet.
You mean during the pandemic?
Either during the pandemic or if you were around doing 9/11, which would have been 20 years before.
Well, I was in Puerto Rico when 9/11 happened, and it was striking for me. It was like, oh my God, because that's all you saw in the news. But an interesting thing that I noticed is that I did my master's degree in New York.
Mhm.
And I had lived in New York before because I did my bachelor's degree in Binghamton, New York.
Mhm.
And I noticed the difference between New York in the 80s and New York after 9/11.
Mhm.
People will help me carry the luggage, will give me seats when they saw me walking in with my my cane, and the whole New York attitude. People were different. They were more of a community and less of don't look at me because I'm not going to look at you, and I'm just going to look at the book in the subway and I'm totally going to ignore you, which is how it was in the 80s. I think it's going back to that again. But it was very refreshing to see New York as an actual community, people really caring about other people. And it's the same people that were used to live there in the 80s. So what I see is that we have we don't know how to set boundaries that are healthy. And instead of setting healthy boundaries, which is what you mentioned a little bit, William, before, we go into this, I'm going to ignore the world around me.
Mm-hmm. Or attack.
Because I'm afraid
Mm-hmm.
to look at somebody in the eyes or something, you know? And I think that, and I'm sure, William, you come across this and in your philosophy and what you do. I think that we need to understand that we are sufficient, that we don't need external input to recognize who we are and what we are. Unfortunately, in this society, you're not allowed to say good things about yourself because then people say you're egotistical and this and that. And I'm like, no. And when I tell, like with my husband, when I tell him, you are a good husband, he bounces it back to me. And I'm like, can you please just absorb it and take it in? Because I'm giving you a compliment. Don't grab your racquetball and throw the ball back at me, which is what people usually do. You agree with me, right, on that, right, William?
Yes, I do.
And
We say my mind, my money, my wife, my husband, my body, my MS, my intellectualism, my. So who's the my? I'm always telling people that if you can quiet your mind and lengthen your breath just for the next 60 seconds, you'll see you're not your thoughts, you're not your body, you're not your mind. You're going to realize some kind of immortality because you're going to realize that you can travel in psychic space.
yeah,
I mean, this is just normal. People say they don't know about psychic or not. Everybody's psychic.
yeah.
So when you're in the dream state, Edison used to have two balls in his hand, metal balls. And when he would go to sleep, the metal balls would fall out and hit a metal plate. And so he would try to stay in the twilight place. So in your secret magic, you have that reality of knowing you're not your thoughts. But when you come out here and we look at each other, it's so hard to not be in this back and forth, who knows, who doesn't know, and all this kind of stuff. So the observer, silent observer aspect of ourself, we'll wait. We'll do it when we're off the call because we're afraid of exposure. So then 9/11 has to happen for us to see that we have this aging or we have this unmet need. So it allows us to start over again and be connected with each other. It's a reset button because connectivity is power. Rather than having our own individual commentary on it all, we can kind of surrender to each other and really let the other person heal.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I guess one of the things, and I don't know what your take on this is, I agree with something that you said. I think that we all have psychic abilities. I think we all need to be more in tune with our dreams and in tune with our ancestral connection. And I also think that a lot of us have a faith walk of one sort or another. I don't necessarily think it is always church-based because sometimes I think that gets too caught up in the philosophies of the personalities, and that's just my own personal opinion because I think that some of them get too caught up in the personality. But one of the things that happens sometimes that frustrates me is that I think we all have that gift, but sometimes it is religious people talk about something called a gift of discernment, particularly those that are very Christian and everything. And I don't know that we necessarily always have that gift of discernment all the time as much as we should have it and all in that space, because there are a lot of the things that are supernatural that are real, but there are those that are not real. Like I personally believe that there are people that, and I'm just going to bring it out here and throw it out there. I personally believe that there are people that speak in tongues and speak in those kind of languages, but I also believe that there are churches
Nana
that
does.
stage it and do it as a stage show.
I call it the Baba.
And then you have to figure out which one is legitimate and which one is not. Because I have definitely gone to my grandmother's church and some other churches, and I have seen what I felt was the real deal. But I've also gone to a church, and not in this apartment complex, but another apartment complex. And I'm sorry, if the same beat is hit at the same time and the same guy runs across the building at the same time, it's hard to take it seriously because it sounds too much staged and all along those lines. So,
well, discernment's different than judgment, right?
Right, exactly.
And if we have a silent mind, we can see clearly. We have to have a silent mind. There can be geniuses don't think. Thinking happens.
Right.
And all of a sudden you got the nice voice and you can hold space for Nana and I so well, and you're able to track conversations and be respectful. That's all because of a silent observer. So how can we do that in relationship to ourselves? What's the voice that we're saying to ourselves? If we don't get past that first step of some type of acknowledgement that I would like to be loved, I would like to be helped, there's an unmet need, there is an incompleteness in my psychology and in my behavior and in my body and in my life. If I can't do that, more pressure is going to happen from the outside world poking on me. But that outside world is just like the agitator on the washing machine. It's showing me where I'm weak. If I can tolerate that for a while, I could do what the Tao Te Ching says, which is the tiger finds no place to land its claw. It means that I'm just so receptive. So then the outside world pulls back and self-regulates. And in today's world, you have got to have that, because you have no sanity at all without it. You've got to find this measurable. Love the word measurable, scientifically measurable, quiet mind, longer breath, longer pulse. It's got to be the priority. If it's the priority and you devote your whole life to it, you might make progress in a couple 100,000 years. I'm still trying.
Also trying.
I think that's a life process. It never ends. I mean, we keep growing and growing, and hopefully, the way I see it, if I grow enough, I will merge with the universe and not come back. But sometimes I see people who, when they talk, they know it all, and I'm like, okay, I move away, because if you know it all, then you're stupid. Because
that's the secret to self-defense. Oh, you want to be in control? Okay, here's what I'm dealing with. That's actually the way you can always defend yourself when somebody really knows and they really want to dominate.
I'm like, okay, you're right, and I just find a way of getting out of their space, because it's not my job to convince anybody that they're wrong, or I shouldn't say that they're wrong, to convince anybody that there are other perspectives. If you cannot see other perspectives, I can disagree with you, but I can see, oh, okay, I understand why they feel that way. Okay, that's fine. You can feel that way. But that doesn't mean I have to feel that way.
You know what I call that, Nana?
What?
Which is such an interesting word. That means grandmother. My heritage is Italian, and my grandmother was Nana. On the one side. I call it completion delusion. The fake shamans and the fake spiritual teachers, and that they got a solution. They can heal your MS. And, I didn't say the story to say, I could do that. I just said that's something that happened. So it might be a nice little piece of food gift for you. But completion delusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think real student is opposite of that.
Yeah. And it's funny because with my MS per se, I don't believe in. People are like, oh, that's private information. I'm like, my life is an open book. I share my life with people. And, that makes me healthier because I don't have to hide anything, And sometimes people tell me, oh, I have a friend that has MS. What did you do to be so well right now? And, I tell them, well, not everybody can do what I did, because I assume responsibility for my health. And I decided I was curable. And then I researched how I could make myself curable.
I love that. I want a recording of this if I can, Mark, just because you
I'll
said
definitely
that.
get a recording of this to you and Nana, and definitely along those lines. But one of the things you were saying, and I sometimes think that we are fearful of that we do not know as well. So I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I have said on this show, and I have said jokingly on several other shows as well, that I see some of the negativities of life, but I also love life, and I love the just going outside and enjoying nature and enjoying the feel of both the humanity, but also what is around me, whether it's a neighbor's dog or cat that might be either the cat in the windowsill, or the dog walking around, and everything, and the rabbits that might be around. I just enjoy the feel of nature and the enjoyment of nature, but I also don't know what's on the other end and everything. So I have jokingly and have been, and I understand the reality that it won't happen. But to Nana's point, I think it comes to mindset. As long as I'm enjoying life, and as long as there are not enough limitations and not things that are going to stop me from living it that way, I have been jokingly saying that I want to make it to 200. Now, I know nobody's made it to 200. Probably only got realistically another 20, 30 years if I'm lucky, and maybe I'll make it to 100. But I still think that part of it is mindset. So if I keep telling myself, then I'm not doing anything whatsoever, because I'm not exercising nearly enough. My diet sucks because I'm going to too many fast food restaurants. But if you ever watch those TV shows and they talk to those centurions, they usually are breaking the rules as well. So I'm like, it must be a mindset thing, to your point, William, because oftentimes they'll be talking about having, and I'm not a drinker. I'm not going to say that I don't have a beer and maybe an occasional wine, but I'm not a heavy drinker and definitely don't deal with any of the drugs. But if you hear some of them talking, they're talking about having relationships with people that are like 30, 40 years younger than them, drinking a fifth of vodka on a regular basis, and a number of other things that you're going like, wait a minute, did the decide to say that we're not supposed to do that? But they have a mindset mentality as well. So I think
Interesting how you see that, isn't it, with centenarians and all. And to Nana's point about the transparency, I think transparency is invincibility.
Right.
If we can really be transparent.
And you are not strong if you're not fearful. You're strong when you face your fears.
Right.
And you face them with, for me, challenges for me are an opportunity to grow.
Right.
So when I was told I had MS, I said, okay, so how can I heal my soul? Because if I don't heal my body, at least if I can heal my soul, I'm good. And I was in a wheelchair for a while in 1995, 1996. But if you see me now walking around, you would never know that I have MS.
That made my day. Love it.
And the other thing that I see is, like, for example, I remember we had a car accident once. It was a week before I married my second husband. And he was like, oh my God. I said, you're good. Are you in pain? There was no blood. We were good. Somebody hit us in the back and it destroyed the car. I said, let's look at the positive of this event. We were getting married the week after that event. And we were going to rent a car paid by our pockets so we could go far, because we didn't like to put the mileage and the wear and tear on our car. Well, guess what? This accident gave us money for a very old car, and the rental to go on our honeymoon was free because the insurance paid for it. And I had therapy. I mean, the shock just hit me, and I had therapy that was paid by the insurance for like 6 months.
Wow.
Until my body got aligned. And I'm like, it's funny because my husband looked at me. He says, what do you mean, let's look at the positive? I said, well, we are nobody died. We're healthy. You know what I mean? It was an accident, but let's see what comes out of this. And I think that challenges are opportunities to grow and opportunities to look at things differently and maybe find different solutions for issues. And for me, the pandemic was very interesting. I did get stressed out here and there, but I realized that I had all this abundance. I moved the studio to my garage, which is where I am right now. My muse went off the scale with the pandemic. And that's what really changed. My art just bloomed with the pandemic. So that's what I see about the pandemic. I learned how to live, confined in my home, but I still went out and I walked, and I noticed that there was less pollution and, less noise and less cars. And it was really nice to walk around in the neighborhood and hear the birds and everything. You could just hear everything. So I focus on that because that was the positive part of the pandemic. Do I want a pandemic again? Not really, but I try to make the best out of it. So that's how I see life. It's easier said than done. Again, it has taken me a long time to be here. I've been in therapy for 40 years because of the MS to learn how to deal with it. But that also helped me to develop this insight of who I am, what's inside my center energy, because we're all this little dot of energy, and we're all the same, but we're all different.
Yeah.
So getting in touch with who I am, it's a life journey.
Yeah.
It doesn't end. And
No doubt
I'm
about that.
working on it. So
We're all working on it and definitely getting ready to wrap up in about another 15, 20 minutes and everything. But one thing that I was curious about, and this is for both you, Nana and William, is there are a lot of folks that watch this show that are in the arts and in the creative space. So what advice would you give for those that are thinking that they want to go in the creative space, particularly when there are those in their circles that might tell them that it's not worth it and that they don't need to do it because they're not making money in the field and all along those lines? But what advice would you give to those that are thinking that they want to be a ceramic artist like you are, or do some of the other art forms that you do, or that they even want to get into music or any of the other creative fields?
I'm going to say one sentence: trust your inspiration and continue to make without thinking about the money. Just think about what you're putting in your art and let things fall into place. That's how it worked for me. I was never thinking about the money. I was always thinking about, oh, what do I want to make? Oh, I like this. Oh, I don't like this. And then I threw it out in the world to see what happened. But my main focus was not the money. It was the joy, the inspiration, the energy that I put, because for me, I put my energy in my art. And when you buy my art, you're buying a piece of me, because every piece has my energy in it. So that's my advice for artists. Do what you love, put your passion in it, and throw it into the world and see what happens.
Just really quick, and I do want to get to William as well. How important, because I think that's one of the other places that I ran across you at as well. Do you think it is for artists to work collectively together? Because I do know that there have been a number of things that have existed, like Pleiades and the Carrick here in Durham, and there have been other ones that are in Raleigh and everything. But how do you think?
Essential. Having an artist community is essential, because you have support and you can talk to each other, you can learn from each other, because we all have different skills and different things. And I'm talking skills outside of the art, computer skills, business skills, all these little skills that everybody has, that they're different. And when you share it with a community, then you're enriching yourself as an artist. And support is very important in anything you do in life, not just art.
And along those same lines, and like I said, I'm definitely gonna get to William's thoughts on art as well. But I know that some artists get frustrated by the corporate side of art, if I could just use that side and everything, because not every artist, there are art administrators that aren't always as supportive of art as they should be and everything. But I just wondering, how do you deal with that? Because I do know that artists, both visual and creatives, can sometimes get frustrated by the administrative side of art. And we know that there's got to be art administrators, but I don't know that they always give the due respect to the artists as much as they should. But I just wondering your take on arts administration and whether you get the kind of support that you would like from the administrative or the corporate side of art.
You know, I have to tell you something. I am in 2 museums in New York City. One of them is the Smithsonian. I am in the North Carolina Museum of Art and in Ceci's Gallery. When somebody doesn't treat me right, I walk away. And that's part of what William was saying. Know who you are and what you want and what you deserve. So if you are set and you understand who you are and your value as an artist, if somebody doesn't support you, you can say, you know what, I'm walking away from this. Somebody else, but you have to trust it in your soul. And I know it's difficult because, you know, we get stressed out. Oh, I believe that if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you don't. And if you don't deserve me to be around you. And this is difficult because I come from a point where I don't make my art to live. Okay. Some artists make their art to live, but I still believe that if you connect yourself with who you are and you trust the universe and the energy, that things will flow, abundance will come your way. But you really have to trust it in your heart. It's not in your brain. It has to be here. You have to trust it in here. How do you do that? It's a lot of work. Right, William?
I can definitely believe that, because I've got some artist friends of mine that friends are frustrated, and sometimes they do it for various reasons. Sometimes they do it because they don't want to sell it. Sometimes they do it because they are maybe a little bit full of themselves and all in that space. But I do have some artists that are charging astronomical amounts, and then you ask them why, and sometimes it might be their ego, and sometimes it might be that they don't necessarily want to sell it. So they can be for a variety of reasons that people set their pricing and all along those lines. And definitely I have seen both ends of that spectrum. But what advice would you give, William, to those that are thinking about wanting to get into the arts or even into the self-help space as well? Because one of the things that
what do I know about the art? You have to ask my wife.
Okay,
I can tell you something about just, I guess, how to be successful.
Right.
You know, we think that if we do better, we're going to feel better. It's not true. If you feel better, you're going to do better. So heartfelt, heart-centered, heartwarming, heart-touching, heart-centered approach comes straight from the heart. To get the brain to go down to the heart, like Nana said, I mean, that's the whole thing. I tell people, and you have to try to be a little compassionate towards me because I'm harsh. I'm a harsh teacher. I say, look, if you can't do both, then go live under a bridge. You have to give everything and say, I'm going to give everything today. And I'm going to be of service, because that's the crown of human achievement. And if you write my favorites list, a favorite quote, a favorite belief, a favorite sight, a favorite scent, a favorite sound, all these little engines can start to hum. And you can feel better. And if you feel better, you're going to do what resonates with you. I don't let people do my class all the time. If I had students here, they would say, you wouldn't believe how many times he says, no, you can't give me thousands of dollars. Because like Nana said, I just don't have any time. If we resonate, then we resonate. If we don't resonate, maybe you're just on a different angle on my head and you can see my bullshit so too much. And so then we don't resonate. Yeah. But if we resonate and we care about each other individually, then we're together and we can work together on something. So you've got to be connected in series with other artists or other people that are doing like a battery in series.
Mhm.
And then that's this whole transparency thing. But I can assure you that if you take a few hours in the morning every day for the rest of your life, and you take a dip in those magic waters of life, and you look at science a little bit, subject yourself to being accountable. Did my mind quiet? Is my behavior improving at all? Are my emotions more loving? Am I more heart-centered? And like Nana said, I mean, this is just endless. So I've noticed a great correlation between mental illness and addiction. There's this idea of figuring it out.
Mhm.
You can't figure it out. What are you going to figure out? There's no figuring it out. If you go to get your PhD or you go to do some job you want to do, you want to start a new radio station or something, the figuring out is automatic because of drive. If
Right.
you're all the time trying to figure out the ones and zeros, you're not observing it, and you're just going to trap yourself. The world's going to suck you dry. But if you just continue to say, well, there's no solution that I know of for myself or for others, but maybe Nana needs a little energy for her body. Well, I can do that. Maybe Mark needs a little bit of kindness and self-assurance for the great job that he does, and well, I could do that.
Right.
The people just tell you what they need, and you could be of service, and that makes your energy no longer be localized just here. Now, like you're alone in a scene of nature, you're connected with the vast expanse. If you do that, it doesn't matter what your IQ is. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your color and your culture. I mean, we should be beyond that stuff now. At least you can be. And if you do these little suggestions, I guarantee you can do whatever you want. And you can certainly be successful fundamentally, foundationally, with having enough money to pay your rent and food. But you would have to prioritize your own heart and mind, your own worth, and things like that. And that means you just got to take a risk and abandon everything else and start the inner journey, because that's the legacy that you're going to give to humankind, is who you are.
Yeah, no doubt about that and everything. Hey, William, just really quickly, and like I said, we get ready to wrap up, and I definitely love the remarks you made. They were very powerful and everything. But what is some of the things that surprised you that you learned from those Olympic athletes that you worked with and everything? You mentioned that and everything, and I'm sure that there is something that you picked up from them that surprised you as a coach and as a human development person.
Super powerful athletes are often neurotics.
Yeah.
So, doesn't impress me. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm too harsh. Maybe you could teach me to be more gentle, more nice, but I've got to find out what's true in life, what's meaningful in life, and how I can heal my own body and mind.
I'll give you something
doesn't do it.
I'll give you something that you might enjoy to go in that space and everything. It was about a week and a half ago, and I do know that there are athletes. We've been fortunate to have some here in the Triangle area, because Duke and UNC are not that far away.
I own martial arts schools, so
Well, I'll give you an example of something that is a positive nature of the athletes, because the entire, I think the entire, or at least the large portion of the Duke basketball team actually came to the Cultural Arts Center that I'm going to go to in about 30 minutes or so, the Hayti Heritage Center, because what they came was to learn the history of Black Wall Street. It's kind of like what Nana teaches with her art. They came to learn the history of that area and that nation and everything. They came with Mark Anthony Neal, who is a well-known historical figure and hip-hop cultural historian.
Well, listen, the discipline, may I just say, the discipline of a great academic or a great athlete is wonderful, and it's the duty is so powerful. But like I was an MMA coach, a fighter coach, and the guy's 6'7", and just forget it. He's like a real giant fighter, scared to death of me. Why? Because I'm not afraid of the punch out there. I'm afraid of the punch that comes close here.
Right.
So I remember I was getting introduced as like the master into the MMA ring the one time. And I said, well, I'm over my head, And then I looked around and I said, you know what? I could beat up 90% of these people so easy. It's silly, because they're all in shock. So a lot of times, if you're a great academic or if you're a great at anything, it's external world. The great founder of Zen's most recent teaching says, to know the self is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by the 10,000 teachers. So you could study and do out here, and that duty and discipline is amazing. But if you're going to really get what you want, which is to revive your childhood mystery and function from that, you got to study in there. And that's hard. Something's got to kiss your forehead or calm your forehead. When I would teach the MMA guy all the time, he wanted to know about all the secret things I know about, the dim mak, the crazy stuff. And all I want to do is teach him to meditate. So if I zap him one time, then all of a sudden he calms down. So that's the idea of the 9/11. You can't face the pain. So pain happens because you're not receptive to other people, and you create these arguments and dramas all the time. But anyway, the idea of reversing the search, as soon as I got him to meditate, as soon as I got him to calm down, his athleticism skyrocketed. He went for the championship in Colorado in 4 fights with everybody else had gyms and trainers and teams, and he only had me and one other person. So I love the athleticism, but I would ask athletes and great academics to reverse their search, because I want that constant flow of energy and magnetism to exist with their wives and husbands, with their bodies, with their children. And that's all an emotional matter.
No, and that's the point I was making, even with the athletes that came in from Duke when they came to ATAC, because they were very engaged in the discussion. They were actually learning a lot, and some of them had already done their research. So they had done research before they came, and they asked some very valid questions. And I mean, questions that are valid. There's a picture of one of the Dukes, one of the founders of Duke University, that is more prominent than Jesus. And there are folks that are frustrated by that. And one of the athletes asked, well, if that's the frustration, why don't you take it down? And then you had to explain the historical nature of the building, that it is easier said than done, and all along those lines. So it made for some interesting context and some interesting conversation. So I was just glad to be able to have that space with them. And I think that my boss said that it may be an annual conversation where the athletes will be coming in regularly, maybe starting off with that university, and then maybe Central and UNC and some of our other institutions will come as well. So it's just good to see that these young people were wanting to engage their minds in discussions outside of the athletic field, to your point, William, and outside of fields that they might not be seen as experts in, because they are here literally in some cases for a season, because some of them are only going to be here for maybe their freshman year, and then they'll go off into the NBA. So the fact that they were wanting to be engaged, and now it wasn't just me, it was some other people that were talking to them as well with the history and learning the history, gave me some encouragement from the mindset of our young people, because sometimes we don't give our young people enough credit in their curiosity and all along.
I think it's great.
Those lines.
I think it's great. I just want them to spend 5-10 minutes for the meditation, so that they can take this power that they have and focus, because we're all aging, we're all going to pass on, and the mystery of life is really, really so available if you do that my favorites list. Like if you list out your favorite quotes, your favorite beliefs, your favorite scenes in nature, it's really difficult to calm down enough to go on the meditative journey to where you find out that the fight of life is far distant when you're in love, when you're happy. And if you do what you love, you just change, you evolve. You become a completely different person by the next time you see somebody today. You just get washed. And I just always am trying to make that point. I don't mean to take away from great accomplishments of people. Sometimes it sounds like I'm doing that.
No, I did not take that in the least bit and everything. As we get ready to wind down and all, I'm actually going to turn off the camera here and give the two of you the full screen. But I'll start with you and everything, Nana, and I definitely want to hear from William. But one of the things that I give everybody on the show is an opportunity to say where they can be reached on the internet. And I know you have a website that folks are listening and have learned quite a bit about you, and hopefully they will go buy some of your artwork, because we'll re-air this several times on Pod TV, which is on Roku, as well as in other sources like LinkedIn and Facebook. And I am all about positivity and hope. That is kind of my own personal mission that I have taken and everything. So if there is a message of positivity and hope that you and William would like to leave with our audience, I'm going to have you do with that as well. So I'll start with you, Nana, but then I want to hear from William also. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll start with you. And if you can tell folks how they can reach you, where you can be found, and any message of positivity and hope that you would like to share.
Thank you, Mark, for having me here, first of all. You can find my art at nanaabreu.com. It's my website. I sell my pieces at the North Carolina Museum of Art, at Cestis Gallery in downtown Durham, in El Museo del Barrio in New York City, and in the National Museum of American Indians in New York City. I don't sell via internet because I don't have enough pieces to mail to people. So I encourage everybody to go see my art in those locations. I want to tell everybody that please change the way you react to negative things that are happening in the world and in our nation, because that's the only thing you can change, and give love and respect to everybody you encounter in your life. Even if you don't agree with them, you can respect them and agree to disagree or move on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on you, William. So it's your turn. So definitely
Okay.
any ways that you can be reached, ways that you can be contacted, and any message of positivity and hope that you have as well.
Okay. As I said earlier when we were talking, there's no external solution to any personal problem. And, in life, you have to be tough as nails. That's why I push it a little bit, because I want to create this understanding that, we need to train ourselves today. We need to surrender to the influences, these sounds, these sights, these people, these circumstances. And we need to have this attitude of service towards people. You don't need to be in shock about the violence of the world and the dangers of the world. No. I call it the parental protection instinct. You don't have to always be afraid. If you need to set a boundary and enforce a boundary, it'll happen automatically. Free your heart, free your mind, devote your entire life to advanced meditation. Upgrade your hormones, upgrade your brainwave coherence, upgrade your listening, your speaking, your behavior, your habits. Make that your whole life. If you do that, you'll continue to become a better version of yourself, and you'll just escape all of this stuff that goes on with how cars drive and how people interact. And you won't be in arguments and confusing all the time, because you'll have more spaciousness. And the greater your sense of spaciousness and timelessness, the quicker your processing speed. So if you could just calm down and lengthen the breath the whole bit, that really is going to produce magic for whatever you want to do. My website is that's my email. My website is williammartino.com. My email is william@williammartino.com. I've written 14 books. They're all free. You just click, and there's the book on my website. I work with people in groups and individually. If you want to send me a message, I'll be happy to receive you.
Well, I greatly appreciate both of you, and Nana is here with me in the Triangle area, and I know that you're over there in the other part of the globe in terms of the nation and everything, and we've got other guests that come in regularly. So this was a dinner party of two and everything, and I've got to get ready to run off to the Cultural Arts Center, but I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you all have enjoyed it as well, and I hope that you will both make return trips, because we definitely love having return guests, as we oftentimes will have folks come and make a return trip. As a matter of fact, earlier today, I think Debbie Peterson, who is a former mayor in California, has made her 4th or 5th trip, because she was on our news show again earlier today. So I do invite you back for a return trips whenever you're available, and I'll definitely be trying to get some of that lovely Nana art and some of the books that you have, William, as well. So definitely we'll be doing that, and who knows, I might run across Nana at the next public event, which I think will be Centerfest. I've got to reach out to them and see if I going to be doing MCing again, because I know I MC'd for the Eno, and I've been MCing just about as long, if not longer, for Centerfest, our street festival here in Durham. So I've got to reach out to Sherry and see if that is something they want me to do again. And definitely, I know that one of the other avid people that is involved in Cinefest might be our next mayor, because Mike Woodard, I know, has announced that he is running along with Deidreana Freeman, who is an art supporter as well. So we'll see whether one of those art supporters or another art supporter become the mayor of Durham, since our current mayor has stepped down because they were tired of the bickering, which is kind of what we were alluding to as well, because sometimes people get frustrated by that bickering, and it drives them out of careers as well. But I'll definitely hope to see you, Nana, and at some point I'll try to get out to your part of the world, William, and meet you. But I do hope to see you at one of our art shows in the near future, and I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. I think you said there's not many of these that you have done, so I hope that it was a worthwhile and fun experience for you.
William, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure meeting both of you.
All right. Y'all take it easy. We get ready to get out of here with a couple of commercials, including one with a gentleman talking about the importance of mentors. As a matter of fact, I think that's what I used to close out, but it is a gentleman that is a friend of mine, and he talks about coaches and teachers as a mentor. So I think that's a fitting way for us to get out on this particular show. So look forward to seeing y'all on an upcoming episode. And if you want to, you can stick around for this 3-minute or about 2-minute soliloquy that this gentleman does about the importance of mentors, and particularly coaches.
The difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents are the champions and have to be our first life coaches and know-it-alls. Who knows how this came to be? Coaches will ask you if you know your right foot from your left, if you know yourself, if you act knowingly good or bad, if you can move and negotiate a field with style and form, if you can tackle or throw a pass, or if your last name is that of a clown, if you can let someone know on the team that you are in trouble before you cause yourself or someone else trouble. If you are ready to learn teamwork or aware that you started out today with your pants down or your sportsmanship was left on the kitchen table. If you know the social studies, the alphabets, science, music, characters, and the stats and the numbers of a great student player eligible to stay on the team, and if you know the poise of great athletic champions and their scientific attitudes that are historical or music to us now, if you have the swag of the game, the discipline, the performance, and artistic form down pat, and if you have the style of gymnastics that the sport has with life, if you have the work ethic and determination to make it all seem easy and not a game at all, if you have the knowledge of all the above, or you don't know things like this even make the difference. I think that when it comes to the importance of parents and their field and self-knowledge, wisdom, virtues, and courage, their teachings, love, respect, care that they illustrate on the field and in the grind of life with their actions and their ideas, experiences, muscle, and strategic magic and skills wrapped around us with their priceless love. For their verbs to be that make us winners in this hard and fast third century that without them, kids and adults, athletes could hardly see or do anything at all. Parents teach us the difference between playing video games and playing on the field. Parents teach us how to be champions. A huge hug should go to parents, coaches, and parent-like community people who have love on the field for you and who are champions for your life, both in and out the games.